You stupid Dems! We told you, voting for Joe Biden would cause gas prices to skyrocket. Although, has Joe Biden really affected the price of gasoline? Today we're going to talk about that, and also, is Nicolas Cage causing people to drown in pools? We'll be discussing both of these things on today's episode of All Facts Matter. So there's been a series of memes, you've probably seen them, even some Fox News segments talking about the Keystone Pipeline and how it's affecting gas prices at the pump. The reality is it isn't, but we're going to talk about it. First, what is the Keystone Pipeline? Well, the Keystone Pipeline is an existing pipeline that cuts from Canada to Cushing, Oklahoma, a part of Illinois, down into Texas, and it already exists and pumps a great deal of oil into the country. Let's take a look at the existing pipeline and what the proposed pipeline would have looked like. So this is a map of the current pipeline. The blue line represents the current pipeline that comes from Canada into the U.S. The red dots is showing you what the proposal would have been if the Keystone XL pipeline had been completed. So why was the Keystone XL pipeline expansion so controversial? Well, advocates on the environmental concerns thought that the pipeline could leak and cause damage to the environment. And they were pretty spot on in believing that that was a possibility, since the current pipeline has already leaked more than a dozen times. On October 31st, 2019, Halloween, 378,000 gallons of oil spilled from this pipeline. So advocates were right, at least in the idea that there's a good chance the pipeline will spill, since it already has. Canada currently imports 3.8 million barrels per day to the U.S., and experts expect that to increase on the existing pipelines to 4.2 or 4.4 million barrels per day. Let's take a look at some of the pipelines that already exist from Canada to the U.S. Canada currently has more than 500,000 miles of pipeline coming from their country and throughout the United States. There's the biggest ones are the Enbridge Line 3, which is built in 1960s, the Keystone XL pipeline, and the Trans Mountain Expansion pipeline. So Canada doesn't promise us any special pricing if we allow them to expand the Keystone XL pipeline. That isn't part of the deal. We won't get cheaper oil from them, because the price of a barrel of oil is largely dependent on an organization, well, several factors, but one of the big organizations is called OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. This organization determines how much oil it's going to produce within those countries to help keep the price of oil where they want it to be. And then consumption plays the other role. How much consumption the U.S. is using and other countries are using at the time helps determine what the price of a barrel of oil would be. But let's take a look at just how dependent we are upon imports from other countries. So this chart is from the U.S. Energy Information Administration, and it goes through U.S. petroleum imports, the gross number of imports versus exports. You come up to a 0.67 net import. So the reason I like the 2019 chart is it shows us what oil imports were like during a time before COVID. And it's only a 0.67 import percentage when we consider our imports versus our exports. So why then is the price of a barrel of gas going up if we have that much oil in our own country? Well, that plays into, if OPEC has set the price at $55 a barrel, for example, then the U.S. is also going to sell its own barrels for $55 a barrel. Why? They're interested in profits. Those companies want to make a profit. So whatever the global price of a barrel of oil, everyone is going to be consistent. So they can sell their oil, make a profit. And gas stations are the same way. They're looking at how much can I get away with selling the gasoline for that you're going to put in your car. So this is a chart that shows what the cost of a barrel of oil has been over time. Starting in April of 2011, it was $112.28. Jump ahead to 2012, $103.31. Then in October 11th of 2018, $70.97. That's when Trump was president. March 8th, 2019, $56.07. In April 21st of 2020, during the height of the pandemic and the lockdowns, $11.26. Now in March 9th, 2021, $64.01. Not that different from March of 2019, $56.07. So you can see how cheap a barrel of oil got during the pandemic. In fact, it got so cheap that many companies that produce oil in the U.S. simply stopped producing it. And that was because it really wasn't worth digging it up, barreling it, transporting it, and selling it when the price was so low. So let's take a look at gasoline prices historically over time. So this is gasoline prices at the pump on average per U.S. dollars in the United States, starting with 1992 and ending in right around 2021. 2020 is where the graph starts to stop. But you can see how volatile the gas market has been over those years and where it's hovered and what it looked like between 2016 and 2018 and how similar those prices are to the prices now. So as you can see, the prices pre-pandemic and as the pandemic restrictions started to loosen, you started to see the price of oil, you're starting to see the price of gas shift so that it is similar to the 2019, 2018, 2017 levels. So Biden's policies haven't created a different cost of gasoline. It's simply the supply and demand has changed. But what about Canada? Have Canada gas prices risen as well, since we are saying, there are people saying the Keystone Pipeline would make a difference? Well, let's look at their prices over time as well. So this is a chart that shows Canadian gasoline prices, 1 U.S. gallon per U.S. dollar. So you're looking at more than $4 a gallon at the pump right now in Canada. And this also shows you how the trend has been similar to here, how the COVID levels affected things and how much gas has risen since. So I hope you can see that the Keystone Pipeline has nothing to do with the price at the pump. If anything, it's what we would call a spurious correlation. In fact, let's take a look at a correlation because we never did get to Nicolas Cage and people drowning in pools. Let's take a look. So this is a fun chart that shows the number of people who drowned by falling into a pool, which correlates with how many films Nicolas Cage appeared in. So when he did 2 films, there were often more than 100 drownings. When he did 4 films, you'd see it jump up to 120 drownings. I hope you liked the video. I hope the next time someone tells you that the president is responsible for good or bad prices, that maybe you share this with them. And if you don't agree and you still think the Keystone Pipeline is the reason your gas price is higher, maybe it's time to consider starting a petition so Nicolas Cage stops doing movies so we can save people who are drowning in swimming pools. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe and like this video.